You're listening to Materials Business, the podcast where engineering, leadership, and innovation meet diversity and inclusion. Hosted by Monica Hernandez, engineer, entrepreneur, and industry advocate. When we embrace different perspectives, we create stronger industries, smarter solutions, and lasting impact. Now, let's dive in.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when are you watching us. And thank you for being part of the Material Business Podcast. My name is Monica Hernandez, and I'm your host. And I have a really special guest, Jason. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Monica.
Jason was introduced to me by someone that has sent many people to the podcast. So at some point, I think I'm going to have Chris coming.
Wait. I'm doing this, but Chris hasn't.
He hasn't. So give him some.
I will let him know.
But yeah, he will be invited because he sent many people, for which I am very grateful. This is why this community thrives, is because all of you guys are so special. And then you send guests and listeners and supporters. And I love you all. So anyway, thank you so much. So Jason and I, we're going to talk about topic that I love, which is sustainability and corrosion. And how do we go into being really sustainable without just checking the mark. And that is very interesting because with all this transition, we want to do as efficient as possible. And then Jason has been working a lot in solar. Thus, this is why we want to see what the differences are, what the commonalities are, and then how can we make this a point in common and success story at the end. So let us start, Jason. Without further ado, tell us who you are.
My name is Jason Land. I have been in the corrosion industry for 18 years now, working primarily with CC Technologies and DNV within the past year. I moved back home to Canada and just kind of doing my own thing. My journey has taken me all across Canada and the United States. I was based primarily out of Columbus, Ohio, with the DNV office and laboratory there. And getting to work with a lot of the corrosion brain trusts that really developed the cathodic protection industry within the early 2000s. As my career went on, I finally got to talk to some of those pioneers and pick their brains and see what they remembered from when they wrote those papers and work on them in various capacities, from failure analysis to research to just basic structure to electrolyte potential measurements. Nothing is as simple as it seems, and being able to talk to and be the dumbest person in the room for as long as I have has been very beneficial for myself. I am a CP technologist since about 2010 or 2011, somewhere around there, and my background is in physics and mathematics. For the vast majority of my career has been in pipeline, doing survey. My line manager admitted to me in around 2021 that they pushed me and kept me in the field for too long because I was too good. Since about 2021, I've been working in the solar industry in parallel with Angel Kowalski, who I reported to, and Brian Holtzbaum, who really helped me out when I first got started out. And the three of us have been really working together in the last 4 years, kind of not only in the solar space, but also in the philosophy of corrosion space, asking questions like, what is effective corrosion management? So,
That's a nice question.
yes, it's very difficult.
I know. And it is, like when we ask companies, do you have a corrosion management system? They are like, of course. Yes, we do. Is it effective? Of course it is. And then you speak with people at the ground level and they're like, what? What? Like, what? Like, we have something like that?
And the
So,
genesis of that was we were asked to basically produce basically a 2-page introduction for a corrosion manual for a company and say what is corrosion control and what is effective corrosion control and build it from there. And the 2 pages was very insightful and took a long time to write and had a lot of thought behind it.
yeah. Yeah, interesting. We have a lot of commonalities. I think everyone that comes to the podcast, I find so interesting that even if we are in complete different industries, we have so much in common, and that is marvelous. I love it. But you're not foreign to what we speak here. We speak a lot about corrosion, and you come from pipeline, and now you're into this new energy, that green, like the label says. What are some of the commonalities that you can say? Maybe some of the things that can be transferred from one to the other?
I mean, at the end of the day, corrosion is fairly straightforward. It's very simple science. However, the application of corrosion control barriers and predicting how corrosion will work, how corrosion will last over the life of a structure. And as the design life increases, it becomes far more complicated to sort of predict parameters that will lead to corrosion down the line. I mean, parameters that can be ignored at the beginning of the design life or the operation life of a buried structure uh, that have zero impact on external corrosion rates at year 15 or year 20 can sometimes be the real driving factor. So we have to be very flexible on determining what's causing the corrosion rates. And there's been some really great quotes in the early corrosion industry as this has been developed, and going back and reviewing some of those papers that have provided me some insight and kind of told me what I already knew, but also allowed me to transfer that information when talking to structural engineers or geotechnicals and engineers and or just designers in general for the solar space and better convey what I've been struggling to message.
So, what do you think is the biggest struggle for common understanding?
Just how complicated corrosion is once it gets going, the basically the high number of interrelated factors that take place, the fact that we don't have x-ray vision, so in the buried side we can't see what's happening. Selling the idea of some sort of monitoring program within the solar industry has been very difficult, but something that's kind of started to gain a little bit of headway within the past year to 18 months or so. Different vendors are starting to come around.
I just remember Florence, he came and he spoke in the podcast about how it's difficult to get the message out because you're selling. It's like you're selling a product that you will have it. You'll get there. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna happen. I know that, but it's not gonna happen today. It's gonna happen 20 years, 15 years, 10 years from now. But when it happens, it's gonna be really bad because then, like you said, it's going to scale up really quickly, and it will be less predictable on how to really do something efficiently to stop it, or and that stuck with me. And then you're confirming the message is like it's better just to really create those barriers from the first, from the design stage, from the get-go, like before get-go, like when you're designing.
I mean, I think I've heard it here, and I know I've heard it in other places. And my one of my mentors, who was just a pure corrosion engineer, he loves to say that you're going to pay for it now, you're going to pay for it later, but either way, you're going to pay for corrosion.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it is. It's gonna make you pay. Like, and now I can hear it like with the evil laugh.
I mean, App's got that line of what 3% of US GDP is
I know.
just corrosion related cost on infrastructure.
And we did the Canada corrosion study as well, like the cost of corrosion. And I was
Yes.
part of the project. I managed the whole thing. And because we are Canadians, we are different. We have, it's so cold here. It's like we do different. The results is the same. Like we are not doing anything different. It's like as much as you go and look at for other areas that are developing at a really fast pace, these concepts of how you can protect for that to happen are still very in the very little stages. Like there is not enough talk. And so how are you seeing this improving? You mentioned that in the last year probably there have been more involvement. So are you seeing the industry moving towards control?
see the industry moving to sort of base layer. We're getting up to the very bottom rung of where we need to be. The introduction of more corrosion engineers on the sort of design and the review side is starting to take place. I know for um, some of the risk reviews that lenders were requiring prior to installation or construction. So during the design phase itself, there wasn't as much as a corrosion impact or study or corrosion review. It was fairly high level. In the last few years, it's become far more in depth. And in a lot of cases, these sort of corrosion reports are fairly straightforward, 5 or 6 page reports, and they don't need to be any more complicated than that. But there have been some on the design side saying that these should be far more expensive just because the follow-up conversation behind it is one of the deeper conversations, one of the more philosophical conversations that take place. And it's difficult. I can see it from both sides because there's not a sort of standard or a set of rules related to corrosion on the solar side that says you have to follow this. And it allows designers and corrosion engineers to go use information from a vast variety of sources, some of them better than others. Probably, I was reviewing anywhere between 2 to 6 corrosion reports a week for months on end, and I probably saw 25 or 30 different approaches on how to handle corrosion or what references they wanted to use and what values they wanted to use or and how they referenced it or how they created it. Solar, at least on the berry side, is different from a lot of the pipeline side because those are typically driven piles into the soil, whereas pipelines are a buried structure in disturbed soil. So the introduction of oxygen into the system is different based on disturbed or undisturbed soil. So the corrosion mechanisms could be different. And Uh, a lot of the studies are taking into account, especially the early 1957 Romanov study, which is all buried, isolated pieces of metal in disturbed soil. So the mechanisms, the data behind it might be close, but it's not the best. There's been more information out there, and getting that out has been kind of a bit of a shortfall on the corrosion industry side.
Do you see any interest from regulators to start doing a little bit more, putting up front some sort of regulation, a standard, follow this guideline at least?
There's some interest in on the geotechnical side.
Mhm.
They're close to putting something out or put something out. On the corrosion side, not so much. And for regulators, I don't know what they have in terms of foundation regulators in solar.
So, for anyone that is not super familiar with what kind of corrosion may happen in a solar, maybe they are just picturing the panel, but they don't know what else. Like, what is it that can corrode in the?
So on the berry side, it's the pile itself. From the pipeline side, I mean, we're always interested in pitting rates, localized corrosion, because you've got a pressurized vessel and we don't want it to leak. On the corrosion side, with it being all driven or sort of on the solar side, with it all being driven piles, the interest is in general corrosion because now they're typically using what are called wide flange piles, W piles, where it has 2 flanges with a web interconnected between the two. And the flanges are what provide the support. The failure mechanism usually takes place with high wind events causing the piles to sort of shear
Mhm.
um, to break across its face. What we're trying to do is make sure that there's enough structural steel on the pile so to overcome those shear forces caused by high wind events. The other kind of driver, especially in our nice Canadian climate, is frost heaves pushing the piles back up and creating weaker spots, or they're no longer as strong as they were designed to be if it gets pushed up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's a variety of things that can happen. How old are those structures now?
I mean, sort of the earlier phases or the first phases, design life was in the 10 to 12, maybe 15-year span. Corrosion wasn't much of a factor in that sort of timeline. And sort of prior to getting to full life or full operation life, where failures could take place due to corrosion, we've now expanded into designing structures for 30 to 40-year design life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Seeing a lot in the 30 to 35-year space. In fact, now when you see design lives in 25 years, at least on the sort of financial review side, we sort of start to question, like, are they trying to maybe circumvent something by having a shorter design life
Mm-hmm.
and then try to push it once things are actually operational?
That never happens, Jason. I just finished a big review for extension of life. I don't know. It has been extended for like double the age. So if it was a human, you will be like, if it was me, for example, you will be speaking with an 80-year-old woman. Sometimes it's interesting. So yeah, it's so what is some of the things that you see that knowing what we know for so long working in the corrosion in traditional sites that we can apply to this industry to make it successful?
We need flexible approaches towards corrosion management for the facility itself. As these facilities get larger and larger, corrosion becomes more complicated as a lot of these structures are interconnected. A large portion may be isolated under certain circumstances, but there are areas that are interconnected through different mechanical connections for holding wires. And there's also typically, and then there's certain piles, especially in the case of where you have motorized trackers that follow the sun throughout the day.
Uh-huh.
And they want to do that because that ups the efficiency by 25+%. So, but it also creates conditions where we have ground connections from the pile to the electrical ground, which you need. So this is a balance between now corrosion, electrical, geotechnical, and structural
So you're talking about collaboration.
collaboration. And we are seeing collaboration between corrosion and geotechnical. We are having conversations. We are talking to each other. The geotechnical are some of my favorite people because I give them the ammunition that they can then use to get the point across that, again, they know something, but they don't have this knowledge to prove it or to explain it. So
Amazing. Seeing those collaborations, I think, is the point that every project thrives, is like because you have a piece of information like you have just described that other people can use for something, and then they have something that you can use for something, and it's just I don't understand why we don't collaborate more because it totally makes sense.
and at the end of the day, we can write something and present it together at a conference, and
Mhm.
then afterwards go together for appies and
There you go.
water.
And then we built our network, and that's how this community of material business, for which I am so grateful. Honestly, when I started, I don't think it would have been for a long time, because who wants to sit down and listen to people talking about these things? And there is a lot of there's it's very rewarding to hear or to receive messages from people in the other side of the world saying, "Oh, this was so cool. Thank you. Can you have that person one time and more, because we really want to know more about it?" So that's so cool. And definitely collaboration is and communication. You have touched probably 2 times or three already in this 22 minutes about communication and how we need to transfer the message. Last week, I was in a conference. I went into a building, it's like the construction industry, and I wanted to see what is the files about new things in their industry, and we're going to have some stuff in our material business from them. But my point was, it was very interesting to see how they are talking about really need to get together, collaborate. And then I was speaking with some of the vendors, and he said, engineers, without knowing I was an engineer, right? They don't know how to talk. And I allowed him to go on and on. And then at the end, I said, I'm an engineer. And he's like, but you're not like the other. And this has been a theme, and it's been one of my missions really, is to make my conferences, or at least my presentations, entertaining, and then that people want to be there and they just are not bored. And that's one of the things that I have been working really hard on, how to communicate in the way that we don't get frustrated and then people listen to our messages. So since you mentioned communication word like 4 times already, 3 times, how do you think we can communicate as Corrosion people better, and so stakeholders receive the message?
So at least on the review side, pass information across. Don't try not to sort of say you're wrong. Again, they're using the best information that's kind of available in front of them, or at least you hope they are. They typically explain how they came across something or how they utilized some sort of reference, and try to find maybe not middle ground, but explain what might be a better approach. Or when I was doing a lot of reviews, I would try to identify whatever approach they used, and then I would utilizing the data on site, kind of recalculate everything using their approach but again, understanding that at least with corrosion, the larger the facility, the larger the pipeline, the more complicated things are. It can't be boiled down to a single number. We can't just say we're going to have a loss rate of X across the whole structure, and that kind of stating that this is kind of our baseline, and admitting that the sheer number of unknowns out there are why all this extra effort is required. That said, if we can start doing data collection from various facilities that are in operation, take the information, bring it together into a database similar to really what the Romanov study was, but do it for solar and identify the condition that these piles are installed, how they're installed, that can give us far more information. I mean, going back to sort of your corrosion question, yeah, we understand the soil drivers, but there's so many other things that are happening. And with a lot of the sort of gurus and pioneers, they always come down to whenever they have a new structure, they're trying to understand what's happening. They start with, I'm just going to draw a circuit. I'm going to draw an electrical circuit of all the corrosion factors taking place, how they might impact, and I'll knock them off one at a time once I'm satisfied that they're not part of the problem. But starting from the very basics, and that excited me because I'd be in the basement, not stuck, hiding. I'd be in the basement drawing circuits for whatever I was trying to figure out, and to have someone else that pioneered things say, oh yeah, that was the same approach they used, sort of vindicated some of my problem solving that I've done within my years.
It's amazing. It sounds like for someone that it's like very young and then they are like deciding their career. Imagining that, like I was imagining you in the basement, almost like an investigator for a crime, and then putting the pictures and the pins and the little connectors, and don't, yeah, that's totally what we do.
And it's not so much that I was hiding in the basement, it was that the conference room had 4 whiteboards that I could start filling up.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, it's very interesting. So I often say that when I go to my speaking engagements or things like that, that I really want these new industries to succeed. There was a guest in this podcast, Teresa. She's amazing. And she said to the audience and to me, I want to convert, like her dad worked in the oil patch back in the days, and her daughter wanted to be in this industry, right? So she wanted to convert the oil patch into the new garden of energy for her daughter. So the transition is, so really that is that picture in your mind of we are in the midst of that transition. To be efficient, we need to use the best of our resources. But sadly, what I have seen, and I am very loudly about this, is very loudly I say it, is a lot of people are taking the green label just as a label, and we are not creating the sustainability that we want because we are not taking in consideration things that we've learned from the industry that we've worked for a long time in the traditional.
My where I'm coming from this is I don't want solar or other industries to fail because we didn't manage the threats that we know exist.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see an array laying on the ground on the news or on a YouTube channel, because I think that's the news now, and saying, well, solar's dead. Let's go back to oil and gas when we know what the solutions are or we know what the problems are. And if we continue to monitor and look for it, we can identify them as they occur and solve problems as they pop up.
Be the dream, right? And that will make really that industry sustainable and then our transition sustainable, because really we are looking for you to utilizing the best out of everyone of the industries, and then like you said, keep feeding it and keep studying it and then perfection it and then continue it, because the learnings from oil and gas, I mean, I remember when I was in refinery and we found the old pictures that they took, I don't know, in the 50s. And there was this inspector in the alkylation unit and the alky tower, and they just repaired the wall of the vessel with Belsona. And then he was standing there and taking the picture, and I was like, oh, if this was happening today, it's like, so we've learned in all the industries and we've refined and then we've done mistakes, and then from mistakes we've learned and then we've created that. But I think what I'm hearing again is we've so much already. We are not starting from zero. We already have a lot of knowledge and a lot of commonalities. We just need to use it in this way. And to go back to the point that you said, the best thing will be that we talk to each other and we build this like database of, oh, you had this one and then this failed happen and then under these conditions, and then probably, do you think that's happening, or are we working towards that or not yet?
I've seen a couple joint industry project proposals out there for doing such work. I've seen it from within solar trying to start it. I've seen it from outside solar trying to start it from various companies for various reasons. Some of this information related to pile examination that has been operating for 3, 5, 10 years, being pulled out and looking at the corrosion along the pile and mapping it all. That has started. A lot of that information is in-house. So we do know that some of this data does exist, and there is a desire to try to start this database. So again, though, sharing information of having metal loss higher than anticipated doesn't it's probably not easy to get that information from someone.
Yeah, I see that a lot in North America. Sharing information is almost like very difficult. And then when you think in the bigger scheme of things, it's like that is what will make this industry thrive, because
Yes.
then you don't have to go through the same struggles and the same things like someone else already fall. Why do you want to fall? 3 more million people to fall the same place, right? It's like, so if
I mean,
anyone.
just think of your life. I know the biggest lessons I have learned are my biggest mistakes.
Totally, totally. I love Ryan Lake, and he's very funny. He's explained like when he introduces himself, he says that he's been all his life chasing failure. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So it is like how you learn the best when you are in that position. So sharing those learnings to me is vital. So if there is anyone listening to this and has some data, we can start doing something like, and we can share things, and we don't have to be so isolated, because I think that was one of the learnings from oil and gas is we can collaborate, and then we can share lessons learned and avoid an incident or a contamination or an impact to environment.
And I mean, with oil and gas, I mean, our biggest struggle when looking at stuff was step one was assessing the quality of the data that was collected. So you can't, I would love to be stepping into, I've seen a lot of talk into the big data, into the AI side of things, but that's not going to work if you don't have quality data.
Totally. Garbage in.
Garbage. And that's what kept me employed for many years was the knowledge that I would collect quality data. So I wouldn't get the easy jobs. It would be the complicated ones or the ones that were under a lot of scrutiny, but it kept me employed for a lot of years. It's just collecting quality data and talking back and forth with those that were performing the analysis or myself performing the analysis, what was happening here and having a record and being able to identify as data was being collected, where are things weird and having the discussions with a collaborative, a group. I mean, when I talk, when I've been having these regular conversations with these specialists, it's typically a group of three people with 120 years of CP and corrosion experience, and I only have 18 of them. So that tells you about the other two.
Yeah, it's so for anyone that is listening to this and they're in the early years of their careers, stick to the people that have the knowledge, because normally they want to share it with no problem. People are so willing, like in the field. When I was in the field, my best teachers were the old welders and the boilermakers, the guy that makes you like, is he gonna eat me or what? Like a big guy, and those were so knowledgeable, and they will teach you so much that you can never learn anywhere.
Go into a yard for the first time with a new operator, finding the old guy in the back that's getting ready to retire, grumpy as can be, and making friends and asking questions. And you start asking them about that, they take up an interest right away in a lot of instances, and they'll share secrets that aren't on paper, and they'll have a couple questions for you. And if you can answer those questions, typically fairly basic, or they've been curious about something for years, it makes them happy, and you start building a relationship.
That's how it goes. And going back to my years in refinery, I had this old grumpy and inspector, and he knew everything. And he still had, although we had a system to put all the data in, he still has his own records on his desk, right? Like with his notes and all that. So it was pretty cool. Like those kinds of experiences will accelerate your learning miles. So Jason, we are coming to an end. It's so fast. And
That went really fast.
every time that I'm at this part, I'm like, oh, I want to spend another 2 hours. But anyway, I want to ask you two last questions. The first question is, why do you listen to our Material Business podcast?
Christopher Taylor sent me your way, and I found it interesting. And I started with the lubrication episode,
Mm-hmm.
which was kind of as far away from me as possible, but the overlap was extensive.
Yeah,
And so it was kind of vindicating in a way that seeing that the challenges I'm facing on a material side, even if it's just this itty bitty world of corrosion, a lot of the challenges that I'm facing are the same across really the material spectrum.
totally. Totally. That episode we recorded with Sanya, and She's amazing. And after that episode, I was in the midst of the corrosion control document review, and I invited the rotative person. I said, I want so bad to talk to this. Oh man, he gave me like an hour and a half of his time, very generous. And he taught me things that are happening in the pumps that is affecting my piping, that is affecting my exchangers. But without talking to him, it would have been complicated. So definitely from now on, they'll be one of the people that I speak with. So it is, again, we go back into every single one of the guests that comes has something special, different, but the commonalities on the work that we perform are very obvious. So definitely, thank you so much for that. My last question, Jason, is what is your last message for the audience? What do you want the material business audience to know?
Communication. Try to speak the language of whoever you're discussing or you're talking things with, if you can. I sort of saved this a little bit for the end. The way that I've been able to break a little bit of barriers on the financial side of things related to corrosion, and I've seen this come up in episode after episode, is when I'm with that business individual or that management individual, I refer to corrosion as a lagging indicator. And it instantly sparks something in their head because they understand what a lagging indicator is.
Awesome.
And if we want to reduce the impact of that lagging indicator, some of our leading indicators might be the amount of data that's collected, the barriers that we install, and then performing checks along the way. So, yeah, once I started referring to it as a lagging indicator, especially on the business side, that has really helped me kind of open doors, and they start to kind of see the challenges I'm facing and the challenges that they will face.
Things that you don't know are going to hurt you. And then it will laugh.
But I don't want them to hurt them. That's the thing.
That is the thing. We want to help you guys. This is our whole purpose. We have been studying and working in this for so long, just to help you not being hurt, not hurt anyone, don't hurt the environment, and then preserve your assets, which is going to give you money.
Yes, exactly.
You should
Money.
Jason, thank you so much for your time, for being so open to share everything. I loved our conversation, and I am very sure all the audience will love it as well. For all the audience, thank you for being with us. Share this episode with someone that may enjoy the conversation, or they may be wanting to get to know a little bit more of what we do in the solar industry and as a corrosionist. And I will see you in the next episode. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for making this a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Materials Business Podcast. Feel free to visit infinitygrowth.ca to see show notes and explore other episodes. If there's someone you think should hear this episode, please share with them. Take care of yourself and have a great rest of your day.